And I think a lot of folks on the left think the best way that they can help people is to make decisions for them and to provide for them wherever they can, to give everyone a base income, to give everyone a base home, to give everyone health care. And so I think a lot of folks on the left believe this is the way to help people. But all of history shows us that doesn't help people, it degrades them.
In the eyes of former U.S. Senator Jim DeMint and Rachel Bovard, what is conservatism really? How has it been misrepresented? How is diversity actually a central feature of conservatism? Why is respect for transcendent moral order important to civil society? And how do progressive policies that sound compassionate actually end up hurting the people they seek to help? This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Jan Jekielek. Today we sit down with Rachel Bovard and Senator Jim DeMint. DeMint is the chairman of the Conservative Partnership Institute, and Rachel Bovard is the senior policy director there. The two co-authored the book, Conservative, Knowing What to Keep. Rachel Bovard, Senator Jim DeMint, wonderful to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to be with you.
So, a really fascinating book, Conservative, Knowing What to Keep. I've been thinking all along as I was reading, what is your impetus here? What's the reason behind writing this book?
Lots of reasons, but one is if you want to understand the insanity in Washington, the division, the complete chaos, the book Conservative can help folks understand that, because there really is a wedge in our nation driving the left from the right, and we want folks to understand what ideas are on either side. For us as conservatives, we just see it as the things we want to keep, the things that make life better. Much of that starts at the personal level. It's not all political. But there is a left in America today that has very different ideas of how the world works. And we've got pretty good data in the book that says their ideas do not work.
Rachel, what about you?
Well, I think there's a big misunderstanding of, or people who are unaware of what conservatives actually stand for. I think you have the left who's trying to define conservatives all as bigots and racists and all these terrible things. And then you have people on the right, I think, who are a little bit confused as well. And so this was our attempt to say, actually, conservatism has a long history of philosophies and ideas. And we've really tried to bring those forward, to really update them for the modern generation and this modern moment, which I think is, unprecedented a little bit for everybody.
So conservatism has been given a kind of a really bad rap. I think you even referenced the Wikipedia page. It kind of gives this negative feel, but you see it totally differently, don't you?
I do, and I really think it gets a bad rap as sort of a fusty, dated ideology, but it's none of those things. It's very much a living tradition and much more of a philosophy of gratefulness than it is of anything else. And I think that's what we really try to talk about in the book. It's not this reflexive series of policy prescriptions that the left gives us, this rigid ideology of things you must do. It's really a way of living and a way of appreciating the world. And it relies a lot on things that have been tried in the past. It gets a bad reputation of being an old, dated philosophy, but that's because I think it reflects on a lot of the wisdom that's been accumulated over the years. I mean, no one ever reinvents the wheel. Human nature doesn't really change that much. All these things have been tried before, and some have succeeded and some has failed. Conservatism simply says, what can we learn from that? Liberalism says, well, let's just burn everything down and start over. We can create utopia here on Earth. And conservatives say, no, we've seen that go wrong in the past. Let's take the things that have worked before, get rid of the things that haven't worked, and use that as our guide for moving forward.
It's very much like the business world. I spent about 25 years there before I fell into politics. It's what we call continuous quality improvement. You identify best practices and you keep making them better. That's a direct parallel with conservatism, is understanding what has worked in the past, using those principles to build a better future. It's not throwing everything out and starting over every day as if you had no knowledge of the past. That's what the left tends to do today, is want to throw everything out. In politics, it's the Constitution, the Declaration, trying to say that all of that is bigoted, written by old white men. We don't
the nation's founding. They're trying to throw that
our
out.
very founding. And so the things that matter are due process. In Washington today, we're completely throwing those things out the window that were developed over years for a reason. So conservatism is taking the best of the past, identifying those things, and building a better future.
So, one thing that struck me as super interesting in the book is that you outline how conservatism is basically diversity is something that's very inherent to conservatism and incredibly important in conservatism. And it kind of feels to me like diversity, when I think of it, I think of basically diversity in the office or something like that. It's almost like the term has been incredibly co-opted. Can you explain what you mean by that and the implications?
Yeah, I think it's something that would surprise people about conservatives, but it's it allows for incredibly diverse opportunities and views and differences. And what we mean by that is, I think the best way to do it is to compare it to socialism. Socialism is the great equalizer. Socialism says everybody's outcome must be the same or we're doing it wrong. But the trick is, it's very, very easy to make everyone equal when they're all equal down here. It's much, much harder to make people equal at the top. And conservatism simply says every person is different. Every person is born with different gifts and views and identities. And that's what we want to allow to flourish. And people should be allowed to pursue their gifts, whatever they are. Even though mine are different from yours, we create a system where everybody can flourish based on the gifts that they have. It's an equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome.
And the irony is, if you want to have a unified people, you've got to respect and celebrate the differences. Because America actually is the world. People have been coming here from all over the world for centuries now. And the way to bring them together is to respect their differences. Because you and I can live next to each other, have very different views, vote for different people, but as long as no one makes us be the same, we can enjoy our differences. That's the problem. That's the tension we have in Washington now, because they don't celebrate diversity on the left. They talk about diversity a lot, but they might be talking about skin color or something else. They're not talking about ideas. They're very intolerant of different beliefs. But in America, we need to celebrate those differences, the differences as individuals and communities at the state level. The problem we have is when we bring all power to Washington and begin to make one-size-fits-all decisions for everybody. Same schools, same health care, same ideas in universities. And then suddenly that creates a tension because people are different and they want to be different. The left has gone well beyond allowing people to have different sexual preferences, to insisting that you agree with their views. And if you don't, you're intolerant or hateful. The difference on the conservative side is the tolerance of people doing lots of different things, believing different lifestyles, but not forcing it on everyone else. And different people are going to think things are right or wrong, and we need to allow that. And the federal government doesn't need to come in and try to conform everyone to a set of beliefs. That's what's dividing America right now, is if you can get 51% of the vote or the Electoral College, you can start directing people's lives all over the country. Americans don't like that, and they're pushing back. Conservatism is a totally different view that respects and celebrates real diversity. And the left emphasizes freedom from responsibility. On the conservative side, it's freedom to do the right thing, freedom to do the things that you must. It's not licensed to do anything you want. And the left has been pretty good at telling people that what we mean by freedom is that you're on your own. No one's going to help you. And all of these groups are out there trying to take advantage of you. And they keep playing to a central power to be the referee and the protector. So that's why they divide us all into groups and foment mistrust, is they're making a case that you need the central power in Washington to protect you from all these others.
The left very much wants to stamp out religious faith of all kinds. They have a religion of atheism to some extent. No one should have belief. The public square should be entirely stripped of anything that smacks of religion. And conservatives say, no, let that flourish, because religious people make better communities, they make better families, they're generally happier, and they don't abuse substances. Like, these things are all empirically true. And so religion, it makes for better citizens, I think, would be the way that Russell Kirk would frame it now.
So do you feel that one of the, ills of society today is that that moral people has become degraded, or the morality has disappeared?
I do think it's a big problem when we talk about creating civil society. I think it's why so many people want to rely on the government, because the things that religious people have that I think make better communities and make better families, those values aren't there anymore. And it does, I think, put this push toward having the government be your God, have the government take care of you.
If you think about it, laws tend to punish folks for the very worst behavior. But a moral values, traditional values, religious values tend to drive people upwards to do the very best they can, to do the good things. And law doesn't tell you to do those things. That's why the transcendent idea is so different than just a country that's based on laws. Because those laws are just to catch the very worst things that we do. But what inspires us to be our very best, it goes back to that transcendent moral order that Kirk was talking about. If you look at the tyrants of history, one of the first things they try to do is to push religion out so that the government becomes the only master. It's the only thing you can look to. And that seems too designed for me to believe sometimes, even of the left. But it does seem, if you follow their policies, that the goal is to destroy all of those other, not only the little platoons, but the different authorities that we might have in our families, from our parents to our priests or pastors. All of those are diminished.
To your point, if you trace back to the forefathers of progressivism, specifically to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he does say, if you're going to actually create a strong child, remove him from the bonds of his father. And he said, let the state develop him in a very sort of neutral, state-focused way. So I don't know,
That just seems evil, and so it's hard for me to accept. But it does seem, if you go back to the whole history, that it's just woven in to take away all of those non-government authorities in our lives and replace it with a central authority. I think a lot of folks on the left think the best way that they can help people is to make decisions for them and to provide for them wherever they can, to give everyone a base income, to give everyone a base home, to give everyone health care. And so I think a lot of folks on the left believe this is the way to help people. But all of history shows us that doesn't help people, it degrades them. When you take away their ability to make their own decisions or their incentives to strive, it doesn't lift people up. They tend to deteriorate, and we see it throughout our society where we create an underclass who are dependent on government rather than aspiring to become more independent. And so for me, as I look at what the left is doing, if you look at the results or the real facts, it's anything but compassionate. They create snares for them that keep them down. But there's an elitist mindset on the left that really believes that the only way to help people is to do it for them. And you can ascribe good motives to that, but I think a lot of folks on the left, I shouldn't say a lot, but the financiers on the left believe that this meme, that this is the only way to help people and create quality, is the way to create central power on this globe, not just in America, but through the United Nations and other supranational groups like the European Union. But if you look at the founders of this country, you could tell that everything they did in the Constitution, they had in mind that the human beings were flawed, that power corrupts, and that they needed to keep power out of the hands of a few. So they divided the federal government into three branches. They gave the states a lot of power, and everything was designed to keep one person from having the levers of power because they knew of our faults.
I think it goes back to, I think it was Madison that said in the Federalist Papers, if men were angels, we wouldn't need all these things. If men were angels, they're not. Women aren't either, by the way. But we need these mediating institutions. We need our separation of powers and our checks and balances to account for the fact that power concentrated in the hands of a few is going to be misused. That is something history teaches us. It's something religion teaches us. It's something every area of our culture has made plain. And so that's why we do it.
Last question, because we're going to have to finish up in a moment. But a lot of our viewers are very, very concerned. I'm very concerned with some of these polls that have been out. We're telling us that young people, your generation and younger, Rachel, that are, essentially believing that socialism is a good idea. Many even saying communism is a good idea. They're wearing Che Guevara t-shirts. all this kind of stuff. So what is the prescription? Of course, we want to get at this, we want to teach the memory of the past, but what can someone do that's watching this show right now to turn the tide, or is this a concern?
Well, I think from my perspective, I think there's a couple of reasons millennials are turning to socialism. And one, I think, is they don't understand at all what it really is. And the polls actually bear this out. Socialism is actually the largest man-made creator of human death and misery on the planet. And I think that hasn't been well articulated. But I think also, the right hasn't done a great job of articulating what a free market is and why it benefits us. I mean, this is a generation that grew up watching the bailouts, of 2008 and 2009, where Wall Street was saved and individual pensions and savings were not. They've done a great job of allowing crony capitalism to flourish and not, presenting what a free market is and how good it can be.
It's not perfect yet, and that's what the left uses to denigrate it, that, okay, some people have been left behind, so let's throw it out and replace it with the worst form of the worst economic system that mankind has ever envisioned. But because we don't teach it well, and because, as Rachel says, Republicans, conservatives, and others don't defend it well, a lot of young people feel like it's much safer to say, I believe in socialism, because it sounds like social media or something that's better than capitalism.
Okay, aside from your book, conservative, where else can they look right now to know what to do? Where can they, is there a website? Is there a...
Yeah, you can find us and the work that we do online at conservativepartnership.org. And there we outline sort of our vision for strengthening, equipping, and unifying the conservative movement here on Capitol Hill, and really taking a lot of these ideas from theory to practice.
Wonderful. Well, it's such a pleasure to have you, Senator Jim
Well,
DeMint.
thank you. Enjoyed it very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.